Something is happening inside his mind that he did not authorize and cannot entirely control, not a dramatic unraveling, not the kind of visible collapse that announces itself to the people around him and demands acknowledgement and response. Something quieter than that and more fundamental. A shift in the underlying architecture of how he processes his days, how he evaluates his choices, how he understands the story he has been telling himself about who he is and what he needs, and what the life he is living actually amounts to when he is honest enough to look at it directly. The shift has been gradual enough that he almost missed it beginning, but it has been accumulating with the patient persistence of something that knows it has time, and what has accumulated is now impossible to dismiss as background noise or temporary feeling, or the predictable aftermath of any significant change in a life. He is missing you, not in the way he expected to miss you, if he expected it at all, not in the manageable, fading way that he may have told himself absence tends to work, where the acute phase passes and what remains is a softened residue of memory that loses its edges with time until it becomes simply the neutral fact of something that was and is no longer. That is not what is happening. What is happening is the opposite of fading. What is happening is a sharpening, a progressive clarification of what your presence meant to him that has been intensifying rather than diminishing with every week that passes, as though distance has given him the perspective that proximity obscured, as though he needed to be fully outside the experience of you to finally understand what the experience of you actually contained. Jordan Peterson has written that we do not see the world as it is, but as we are, that the lens through which we interpret reality is shaped by our character, our fears, our accumulated choices, and that changing the lens requires changing something fundamental. About the person doing the looking, he has been looking at his life through a lens that did not have adequate resolution for the question of what you meant to him, and something about your absence has begun to change the lens, has begun to force a resolution that was not available to him before, that is making visible things he could not quite see when he was still inside the comfortable assumption that his life was basically arranged correctly and that what he was moving away from was simply a disruption to an equilibrium that was otherwise sound. The equilibrium was not sound. He is understanding this now in the particular way that men understand things they have been resisting, slowly, reluctantly, with frequent retreats back into the more comfortable alternative interpretation, but with a direction that is unmistakably toward the truth rather than away from it. And the truth, arriving in pieces with the accumulated force of everything he has been declining to fully feel, is reorganizing the way he thinks about almost everything. Right, I feel this shift from here in the comments if you have sensed something changing in the atmosphere around him. Peterson speaks about the difference between the life lived in reaction and the life lived with genuine intention, that most people are not authors of their existence, but characters in a story being written by their unexamined assumptions, their inherited patterns, their unconscious drives that operate beneath the level of conscious awareness and produce choices that the conscious mind then rationalizes as decisions. The man who has not examined himself is the man who moves through life in this reactive mode, who mistakes his conditioned responses for genuine preferences, who calls his avoidance wisdom and his fear practicality and his withdrawal self-knowledge. This man has been living reactively in the domain of what existed between you. He responded to the depth of the connection, not with the intentional choice to receive it fully and be changed by it in the direction of becoming more honest, more present, more genuinely himself, but with the reactive response of someone whose conditioning told him that depth was dangerous, that the specific quality of aliveness that your presence produced in him was a threat to the equilibrium he had been maintaining, that the person he became when he was truly with you was somehow less safe than the more defended version of himself that operated at a careful remove from genuine intimacy. The reaction felt like a decision at the time. This is how unconscious patterns protect themselves from examination. They present themselves as chosen rather than compelled, as the product of deliberate reflection rather than the automatic operation of defenses built long before this specific situation required them. He told himself he was being reasonable, that he was assessing the situation accurately and responding accordingly, that the distance he maintained, or the leaving he enacted, or the unavailability he performed, was the considered response of a man who understood himself and his limits. What he is understanding now, in the changed thinking that missing you is producing, is that the response was not as considered as it felt, that what presented itself as deliberate assessment was largely the automatic operation of a pattern he inherited rather than chose, a way of relating to intimacy that was formed in conditions that no longer exist and applied to a situation that did not warrant it. He is understanding that he was not responding to you. He was responding to something older than you, something that your presence and your particular qualities and your genuine willingness to be real with him happened to trigger, and that the triggering produced a response that was not really about you at all, but that landed on you with its full weight regardless. This understanding is new. It is arriving with the discomfort of something that requires him to revise a self-image he has been attached to, and it is changing the way he thinks about what happened between you in ways that are beginning to feel urgent rather than simply interesting. The thinking changes in specific and observable ways. This matters because thought is not abstract. It is the upstream of behavior, the place where what eventually becomes action first takes shape. Understanding how his thinking is changing gives some visibility into what that changed thinking is going to produce, what it is building toward, what the downstream of this internal shift will eventually look like when it becomes external and visible and directed toward you. He thinks about you first now in situations where he used to think about you last, or not at all. When something significant happens, a professional development, a conversation that struck him as important, a problem that arrived without an obvious solution, the first internal movement is toward you, toward the imagined conversation he would have with you about it, toward the particular quality of engagement that your mind brought to his when both of you were genuinely thinking together rather than simply talking at each other. That first movement was always there, he is now understanding, but he was overriding it, redirecting it, managing it away before it could surface fully into conscious awareness. He is no longer able to override it with the same efficiency. It surfaces before the management gets there. And in the moment of its surfacing, before he has redirected it, he feels the full weight of what its fulfillment would require and what its non-fulfillment costs. He thinks about specific things you said, not the grand statements, not the memorable moments that would make it into the highlight reel of a relationship, the ordinary things, the observation you made in passing that turned out to be exactly right about something he was not yet ready to acknowledge, the question you asked that was so precisely aimed at the thing he was avoiding, that he had to deflect it or sit with the uncomfortable truth it was pointing toward. The way you named something between you with an accuracy that should have stopped him in his tracks and instead sent him further into the defended position he was already occupying. He thinks about those things now with the particular regret of someone who can see, from the outside of the moment, exactly what was available in it and exactly what his response to that availability cost both of you. He thinks about who he was with you, not sentimentally, not in the rosy, filtered way of nostalgia that softens everything into something more beautiful than it was, but with the specific and uncomfortable honesty of someone who is comparing two versions of himself and finding that the comparison is not flattering to the version that is currently operational. The version of himself that existed in your presence, more honest, more genuinely engaged, more willing to be moved by things rather than managing his response to them from behind the glass of ironic distance, is a version he has not been able to fully access since. And the inaccessibility of it is not something he can attribute to your absence alone. He is beginning to understand that the version of himself he was with you was not produced by you exactly, was not dependent on your specific presence for its existence, but was called forward by you, was the response of something in him to something in you that recognized each other and produced between them a quality of contact that his ordinary defenses were not equipped to prevent. Peterson has a framework for understanding what happens when a man encounters something that calls him toward growth, and he retreats from it rather than moving toward it. He describes it as the refusal of the call, the moment when life offers an invitation to become more than you currently are, and the person declines the invitation, choosing the safety of the familiar over the difficulty of the expanding. The refusal is never without cost. The cost is not always immediately visible, but it accumulates. It produces over time a specific kind of diminishment, not the dramatic diminishment of a life gone badly wrong, but the quiet diminishment of a life that is technically functional, but that has contracted around the refusal, that has organized itself to avoid repeating the vulnerability that the call required, that has become smaller in the specific domain where it declined to grow. He refused the call that you represented. Not with full awareness, he did not sit down and consciously decide to decline the invitation to become someone who could receive what you were offering with the fullness that it deserved, but with the accumulated weight of small choices that each seemed manageable and reasonable in isolation, and that together constituted a refusal. The choice to not say the honest thing when honesty was available. The choice to create distance when closeness was what the moment required. The choice to protect the version of himself that had always managed well enough rather than risk becoming the version that your presence was asking him toward. The diminishment has been arriving. He has been feeling it without entirely knowing what to call it, a quality of flatness in his days that was not there before, a sense of operating below the threshold of genuine engagement with his own life, a persistent awareness that something which used to be available to him is no longer available, and the gradual and then sudden understanding that what is no longer available is not some external circumstance, but an internal state, a quality of aliveness and genuine presence that was accessible when you were part of his life, and that he has not been able to reliably access since. Missing you is producing a new clarity about this diminishment. It is giving him the specific information he needs to understand what the diminishment is and where it came from, not as a vague sense of something being wrong, but as the precise and actionable understanding of a specific choice that produced a specific consequence that he is now living inside, and that he has the power to address if he is willing to do what addressing it requires. There is a conversation happening inside him that he has not had with anyone else. In the private hours, the early morning before the day has fully assembled itself around him, the late evening when the noise of everything he uses to stay productively occupied has finally quieted. He is having an honest conversation with himself about what he actually wants, not what he has been telling himself he wants, not the curated version of his desires that fits comfortably inside the self-image he has been maintaining, but what he actually wants when he is willing to be completely truthful about it, when the management is down and the performance is resting and the only audience is his own undefended interior. What he actually wants is you. Not you as a concept, not the idea of connection or the category of intimacy or the generic comfort of not being alone. You specifically, with the specific qualities that are yours and no one else's, with the specific texture of presence that your mind and your honesty and your genuine willingness to be real bring to any space you occupy. The specificity of the wanting is what distinguishes this from ordinary loneliness. Ordinary loneliness can be addressed by ordinary connection, by filling the space with something warm and present and sufficiently engaging. What he is experiencing cannot be addressed that way because it is not the absence of generic connection, but the absence of the particular and irreplaceable version of it that existed when you were in his life. He knows this now. The knowing is uncomfortable in the specific way that genuine self-knowledge is uncomfortable, because it comes with implications, because understanding what you actually want requires you to take some position relative to the gap between what you want and what you have, because the honest accounting of desire is also inevitably the honest accounting of the choices that produce the distance between desire and reality. Peterson says that to know what you want and to refuse to take responsibility for pursuing it is a form of self-betrayal that accumulates its cost silently but inevitably, that the person who will not act on their own genuine understanding of what they need is a person who is in bad faith with themselves, whose life is organized around an implicit lie that eventually becomes impossible to maintain without significant damage to the integrity of the self-understanding that makes coherent action possible. He has been in that bad faith. The private conversation he is having with himself is the beginning of his attempt to get out of it. The way he thinks about the future has changed. This is perhaps the most significant shift, because thinking about the future is thinking about meaning, about what kind of life is worth working toward, about what arrangements of experience and connection and purpose constitute a life that feels genuinely worth living, rather than simply successfully maintained. His thinking about the future used to proceed along tracks that did not include you, or included you only as a memory to be integrated and moved past. as part of a history that was important, but that belonged firmly in the past where histories belong. That thinking is no longer available to him in the same form. When he thinks about the future now, about what he wants the texture of his life to be in the years ahead, about what arrangements of work and connection and daily experience would constitute something genuinely meaningful, rather than simply impressive or comfortable, the thinking keeps arriving at a specific absence. Not the abstract absence of relationship or partnership. Those categories can be filled in various ways, and he is not naive about that, but the specific absence of a quality of connection that he has had once, with you, and has not found replicated, and does not expect to find replicated simply by continuing to move forward in the direction he has been moving. The future, as he is thinking about it now, has a gap in it. A gap that is shaped like the specific thing that existed between you, that would require the specific thing you bring to fill, that cannot be addressed by substitution, because what he is missing is not a function but a person. And thinking about the future with that gap visible has been changing his relationship to the present, making him more aware of what he is choosing in each day, more conscious of the accumulated weight of choosing to not address what needs to be addressed, more honest with himself about the cost of continuing to move in a direction that does not move him toward what he actually wants. This is the changed thinking that missing you produces. Not just emotional turbulence, not just the sentimental revisiting of a past that might have been better, but a genuine reorganization of his orientation toward his own future, a shift in what he is optimizing for, what he is willing to tolerate, what he is no longer willing to accept as sufficient when he knows that something more was available and that its unavailability is the product of his own choices. Peterson draws a distinction that is essential here between the emotion of regret and the action that genuine regret demands. He is clear that feeling bad about a choice is not the same as taking responsibility for it. That remorse without action is ultimately still a self-centered experience, still about the person's own discomfort with themselves, rather than about the genuine repair of what their choices damaged. The man who feels terrible about what he did and does nothing is not a man who has reckoned with his choices. He is a man who has added the suffering of guilt to the suffering of loss without having done anything to address the actual situation that produced both. He is aware of this distinction, at least partially. He can feel the difference between the passive suffering of missing you and the active demand that the suffering is making. The demand that he do something, that the understanding he has arrived at through the changed thinking find its expression in changed behavior, that the internal shift become visible externally in a way that is honest and direct and proportionate to what the situation actually requires. The gap between awareness and action is where he is currently living, and the gap is producing its own specific discomfort, the discomfort of someone who knows what they need to do and has not yet found the precise combination of courage and clarity and the right moment that would make doing it feel possible. The courage is building. This is the important thing to hold on to in understanding what is coming next. Not that it has fully arrived, not that he has resolved his uncertainty or conquered his fear or achieved the kind of readiness that makes action feel costless, but that the trajectory is clear, that the building is happening, that every day he spends inside the changed thinking, inside the sharpening clarity of what he misses and why and what it means for who he needs to become, is a day in which something accumulates in the direction of the action that the situation is demanding from him. He is going to reach out, not because the fear has gone. The fear will be present regardless and is not the deciding factor, but because the cost of not reaching out has exceeded the cost of reaching out in the internal accounting that has been running continuously beneath the surface of his daily life. Peterson frames this as the moment when the burden of continued avoidance becomes heavier than the burden of the confrontation that was being avoided. When the pain of staying silent surpasses the pain of speaking honestly, when the life organized around the not doing becomes more intolerable than the uncertainty of the doing. That moment is close. The calculation has been shifting for weeks, and it is nearly at its conclusion. When it completes itself, what follows will not be a tentative, deniable, test-the-waters signal designed to give him information without requiring him to commit to anything real. What follows will be something more substantial, an actual reaching, an actual expression, an actual attempt to close the gap between what he understands internally and what you have access to externally. It will be imperfect. Real things always are. The perfectly composed, strategically calibrated approach is the approach of someone who is still managing their presentation rather than honestly expressing their interior. What comes from him will carry the marks of its own difficulty, the evidence of the resistance it had to overcome to arrive, and that difficulty will be part of what makes it real. What he says will be specific in a way that matters. He will not offer the vague generalities of someone who wants the emotional credit of reaching out without the full vulnerability of saying something that could not be interpreted as anything other than what it is. He has been inside the specificity of what he misses for too long now to emerge from it into vague language. The specificity of the missing will produce specificity in the expression, particular acknowledgements, particular questions, the kind of language that can only come from someone who has been paying very close attention to the precise content of their own interior experience, rather than simply noting that something feels wrong and reaching toward the nearest available solution. Right, I can feel this building in the comments if you sense the energy moving in the direction of something real. There is something he needs you to understand about what has been happening in him, and it is something that the change thinking is making him more rather than less capable of articulating. He needs you to understand that the distance or the absence or the unavailability that defined whatever period preceded this moment was not a reflection of your value. That is the understanding that has arrived with perhaps the most force in the change thinking. The understanding that the problem was never you, never the specific qualities you brought, never the depth or the demand or the genuine reality of what you were offering. The problem was always his relationship to those things, his capacity to receive them, his willingness to be the kind of person that receiving them required. You brought something real. He knew it at some level even when he was not fully receiving it. And the pattern that produced the not receiving, the conditioned response to depth and genuine intimacy that organized itself as distance or management, or the quiet withdrawal from whatever was getting too close to the part of him that could actually be affected, that pattern was not a judgment of you. It was a limitation in him that happened to be activated by your particular qualities, by the specific combination of honesty and presence and genuine intelligence that you brought, because those qualities demanded a corresponding level of honesty and presence and genuine engagement from him, and he was not yet equipped to provide that on the consistent basis that the connection deserved. He is not certain he is equipped now. This is part of the honesty of the changed thinking. It does not produce false confidence about his readiness, does not resolve his uncertainty about his own capacity into a neat conclusion that he is now different in all the ways that matter. What it produces is the understanding that the question of his readiness is one he cannot answer in isolation, cannot answer by continuing to think about it from the safe remove of his own interior. It can only be answered in contact, in the actual risky business of reaching toward you and allowing what follows to reveal something about who he is capable of being when he is no longer operating from behind the protection of distance. Peterson speaks about the necessity of stepping into the unknown, rather than remaining in the known that has become insufficient, that the person who refuses to enter the chaos of genuine uncertainty, who stays within the order of what is familiar and manageable rather than moving into the territory where genuine growth requires genuine risk, is a person who has chosen stagnation over development and will feel the consequences of that choice in the gradually increasing weight of a life that has organized itself around the avoidance of its own expansion. He has been in that stagnation, not in his professional life, not in the external domains where his competence and his drive have continued to produce results, but in the interior domain, in the domain of genuine connection and emotional honesty and the willingness to be fully present with something that could actually affect him. In that domain, he has been static, and the stagnation has been costing him in ways that were not fully visible until missing you gave him the specific language for what the cost was. The movement toward you, toward the risk of reaching out, of being honest about what the change thinking has produced, of making visible what has been invisible, is the movement out of stagnation, that his own integrity is demanding of him. Not because it will necessarily produce the outcome he is hoping for, not because your response is in any way guaranteed or predictable or required to take any particular form, but because the reaching itself is the action of a man who is willing to take responsibility for his own desires and his own history and his own role in producing the situation that he is now trying to address. And taking that responsibility, regardless of how it is received, is the beginning of the kind of character that Peterson identifies as the foundation of a meaningful life. You will receive what comes from him at a particular moment in your own story. Not the moment of the beginning, not the moment of someone who has not moved at all during the period of his absence, the moment of someone who has been doing her own work, her own thinking, her own arriving at clarity about what she needs and what she deserves and what she is, and is not willing to accept regardless of who is asking her to accept it. That version of you has a different relationship to what he brings than the earlier version would have had. She is not without feeling. The feeling is real and present and does not evaporate simply because clarity has been added to it. But the feeling exists within a framework of self-knowledge that the earlier version did not have access to in the same way. She knows what the pattern was. She knows what it cost her. She knows what genuine change looks like, as opposed to what the performance of genuine change looks like, because she has thought about it honestly, rather than through the hopeful filter of wanting it to be real simply because she wants it to be real. Peterson says that the person who has done the genuine work of self-knowledge is not easily deceived, not because cynicism has replaced openness, but because the self-knowledge produces a clarity of perception that is more reliable than the wishful interpretation that replaces it in the absence of genuine understanding. You have that clarity now. You will bring it to whatever arrives. And the bringing of it is not a hardness or a defense or a punishment. It is simply the full presence of who you are, which is the only thing that has ever been worth bringing to anything real. The changed thinking in him is not finished. It is in process, still moving, still arriving at new layers of understanding that the earlier layers made possible. What arrives today is not necessarily what will have arrived by the time he reaches you. The trajectory is consistent, but the content is still deepening, still finding its way to the specific honesty that a genuine reaching toward you will require. He is becoming, in the changed thinking, someone who is closer to being able to offer what the situation deserves than he was when it began. Not fully there, not resolved, not in possession of the complete equipment that a genuinely new beginning between you would require from him, but closer, and closer matters. Closer is movement in the right direction. Closer is the product of genuine effort applied in the correct domain, not the domain of external performance or professional achievement, or the maintenance of the impression that everything is fine, but the interior domain where the work that actually matters has to happen if anything real is going to change. The missing you is doing something to him that nothing else has been able to do. It is making him honest in the specific territory where his dishonesty has been most costly. It is producing in him the particular quality of clarity that only genuine loss makes possible. The clarity of someone who has lived inside the consequence of a choice long enough to understand the choice completely, who can see from inside the consequence exactly what produced it and exactly what addressing it would require. That clarity is the most valuable thing the missing has produced. More valuable than the feeling itself, more valuable than the softening of his position, or the nostalgia that surfaces in the unguarded hours. Because the clarity can produce action in a way that feeling alone cannot. The feeling comes and goes and can be managed, redirected, covered with the right application of distraction and forward motion. The clarity does not go. It simply waits, with the patience of something that knows it has the full weight of truth behind it, for the moment when the person carrying it finally stops postponing the action that the clarity demands and does the thing that needs to be done. That moment is approaching. The changed thinking is building toward it. The missing is sharpening the clarity that makes it possible. And what happens when it arrives? When the internal finally becomes external, when the private honesty becomes a public reaching, when the man who has been changed by missing you brings that change into contact with the person whose absence changed him. That is where the real story begins. Not where it ended, not where it was interrupted, where it begins, with both of you carrying more understanding than you had before, more honesty about what you each bring and what you each need, and what genuine presence between you has always required and always been worth. That beginning, if it comes, will be built on something more solid than what preceded it. It will be built on the particular foundation that only genuine reckoning can produce. The foundation of two people who know each other and themselves more honestly than they did before the difficulty that made the knowing necessary. That is not nothing. In the landscape of what is actually possible between two people who have been real with each other even in the most difficult ways, that is in fact everything.